It's not about you. Look, that's true in a lot of areas of life, but nowhere is it more evident than in sales. Look, I spend a lot of my time reviewing sales calls for clients. Think of it like a professional athlete watching game film, right? You see things in the replay that you never notice in the moment. So I was listening to one recently, and the rep, he was super prepared. Like this guy, he knew his product inside and out. He was articulate, confident, and clearly a subject matter expert. But something felt off. He talked and talked and talked about the features, about the company, how great it was, about how wonderful the implementation process is, about customer success stories, which are great, but the prospect barely spoke. So, in fact, my son walked past while I was listening to the call and asked, "Hey, mom, is there even anyone on the other line?" Oh, ouch, right? Here's the interesting part. So, I don't think that this salesperson was trying to be self-centered. I don't think he was trying to make it all about himself. And I know he genuinely wanted to help, but his intention had quietly shifted. And instead of trying to understand the buyer and where he was coming from, the buyer's issues, the salesperson was trying to prove himself. Right? And that's the trap that every salesperson and every leader falls into at some point, right? When we're focused on proving our value, we stop creating value. Look, when we're focused on sounding smart and getting our needs met through sales, like we stop getting curious. And when we're focused on closing, we stop connecting and stop asking great questions. So, here's the ironic part. The best salespeople I've ever coached, they don't feel the need to prove anything, right? They walk into every sales conversation with one simple intention. Like, I'm here to understand whether or not I can genuinely help this prospect. And sometimes that leads to a sale. In fact, more times than not. And sometimes it leads to recommending that they do nothing, right? Sometimes it means referring them to somebody else, or, oddly enough, um, sometimes it's like, hey, just stay where you're at. Status quo is the right answer in this situation. And so what's interesting is those are the people who usually earn the most trust. They get more referrals and ultimately the most business. So before your next sales call, don't ask yourself, how can I impress them? Ask yourself, whose needs am I here trying to meet? Is it mine or theirs? Because that's the moment the conversation, becomes about you if you're trying to get your needs met. And it stops being about the customer. So, and that's when selling becomes a presentation instead of a partnership. Look, it sounds simple, but I know it's not easy. But remember, we can only grow when we choose to get outside of our comfort zone, because that's the growth zone. So get growing today.